Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got Josh Yohe with The Athletic and comedian Joe Bartnick alongside. And, gentlemen, yesterday was a lifeless performance against the Bruins. And I'll just lead it off with this. We have now secured a top 10 pick, which is really weird to hear that said about the Pittsburgh Penguins. But yeah, we've got a top 10 pick. Here we are. The Rangers, we could talk about them in the NHL segment, but they're falling. So we could have two next year. Who knows? But yeah, Penguins did not look great yesterday, and they kind of looked a little out of gas, didn't they, Josh?
Yeah, this was the kind of performance I think we've all been waiting to see from the Penguins, right? Ever since let's be honest, we've known for weeks didn't really have a chance to make the playoffs, and yet they kept playing so hard. We're so energized, which I give Mike Sullivan a lot of credit for that. And I know there are many people viewing this right now saying, this is bad. We want them to lose. We want the top 5 pick. And I understand that, but you can't really tell a coach or Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin, hey guys, maybe try not to play so hard. Let's get that top 5 pick. And to their credit, they had some wonderful wins, especially the game in Dallas last week. Even in Jersey, I thought they played pretty well Friday night. This game Sunday, as I put in my article, I feel very bad if people spent money to see that game against the Bruins. That was a terrible performance. It was just a really boring game. Not any life or effort at all from the Penguins. We haven't said that many times this season, especially in games at home. There have only been a couple really, really stinkers. But Jesus, Joe, that was a terrible hockey game.
It was a terrible hockey game, and it with all I can't speak of the words right now. With full disclosure, I heard the first half of the game called by the great Joe Brandon, the old 2-9er. I was traveling, and man, we never had the puck.
No, we did not.
It was like keep away. I couldn't believe it. And then people were texting in. Friends of mine saying the Penguins look terrible. I'm like, they don't sound very good either. I mean, it was what did this? And it sounded like Jari was standing on his head for the first half of the game. And it's a shame because I thought they played it almost like if you're gonna suck. I think that's an old that's an old coach's saying, I believe. I know that Gord Stellick always says it. If you're gonna suck on the road. So it's like they should have used all the effort they used against the Devils, against the Bruins, and maybe just sucked in Newark because everything kind of sucks in Newark. Because it was the antithesis of the Newark game where I thought they played great hockey.
They did. It's really weird in the NHL right now, and we can get into this more in the NHL part 2 of our program. But there's just a lot of games that don't matter right now, and a lot of teams have known for a while where their position is in the playoffs. Now, Jersey's also banged up, which is part of their problem, but they had nothing to play for, and they're not very good right now anyway. The Bruins are a weird team because, they sell at the deadline, then they win 2 straight right after the deadline, or win 2 straight, then they lose 10 in a row, and now all of a sudden they're starting to play a little bit better for some reason. There's nothing in it for them. Of course, I think they have a top 5 pick secured now. I had no idea what to expect from that game because you had 2 non-playoff teams, and the Bruins had really been tanking. But they played a pretty good game, and the Penguins just could not have looked more disinterested in that game, and that's why Sully was so unhappy afterwards. But you mentioned Tristan Jarry, and I'm glad you brought him up. I was actually doing some numbers this morning for an article at The Athletic, and since Jarry was recalled, which was right after the trade deadline, actually it was before the deadline, his first game was in Minnesota. Since then, his save percentage is .904, which isn't going to get people's attention necessarily, but the league average right now is only .901. I think it's down a lot the last couple of years. He's at a .904 save percentage in the last month, playing behind that defense, playing behind a team that gives up so many great A's. And I thought he was really good yesterday. He has become a real story. Like, would I trade him if I could? If I were Dubas, yes, of course. Would I trust him long term? No. But I give him credit for the way he's rebounded. I wonder if he has some value now. I wonder if we might see him at the World Championships playing for Canada, in which Kyle Dubas is picking the team, by the way. It's not like they have many goaltenders to begin with. Jarry has become a story. He had those 2 bad games when he got pulled in Tampa and Buffalo, but .904 save percentage behind this team since then, that's actually pretty good work.
It's really not bad at all. And that's actually one of the questions I had for both of you guys is like, I maybe mentioned it last week, but I'm like, I don't know. Is Jari just the best option to go forward? Like you said, if you can trade him, great. But next year, you're kind of waiting for these young guys to come up. Why not just play Jari? Ned's an easier contract to swallow, or if you have to, cut him or whatever. But what do you guys think? I mean, is it really that bad of a thing if Tristan Jari stays here?
I think I went on record last week saying that I just want to bring Miroshov up and let him sink or swim.
Yeah.
If he's that good, he can be Barrasso, he can be Fleury, he can be Waugh, come in and maybe let's go on a run next year. I think we obviously can't keep Nedeljkovic because he's just terrible. Whatever, even if his contract is less, Josh, I mean, he's been terrible this year. I mean, I know he's a good guy, but great, come back for the reunion. I mean, maybe it is Jari, and I'm not in the locker room, Josh. You are, but Jari seems to have a decent personality. He seems like he plays well with others. I don't think he would hurt Miroshov as far as not working with him properly. Or do you feel that way?
No, I don't think he would be a problem with him at all. It's only a good thing for the Penguins if Jari keeps performing better. Is it ideal to trade him this summer if you can? Yeah, I think to still get out from under that contract is in everybody's best interest. And I think for Jari, he just screams to me as a guy who needs a change of scenery. It's not like he doesn't have talent. It just hasn't worked in Pittsburgh. You don't want to buy him out. There are ramifications that come with buying people out. You never really want to do that. Maybe it is in the Penguins' best interest for him to be their opening night goaltender in October, as crazy as it might sound. What's the worst thing he can do at this point? Struggle some more? Okay. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I think when Miroshov's ready, whenever that is, that might be in October, that might be in December, might not be until the next season. I don't know when it will be. When he's ready, I don't think the Penguins are going to block his path to the net. And I don't just mean being on the team. I mean being the guy. When they deem he's ready, they don't want to push him. They don't want to force him until he's ready. And I think they're really curious to see how he handles the playoffs in the AHL this spring. That can often be a springboard to bigger and better things. But the last thing you want to do is go out and bring in another veteran goaltender when you're already paying these guys so much money. And Nedeljkovic's contract's a problem too. I mean, no, he's not making nearly as much as Jari, but he wasn't good enough to justify the contract that he made, and you still have him for another year, which I think if Kyle could have a do-over, he probably only would have given Ned that 1 year.
Yeah, I think Ned should just be in Wilkes-Barre. Just that's it. He has no value to the big club. He just doesn't. He doesn't win. He doesn't make enough saves. He makes too much money. Let a young kid be the backup.
Well, and another question for the Penguins, and I don't have the answer. I don't know that anybody really does. We all know Miroshov looks like he's got the talent to be big time. So everyone is rightfully excited about that. How good is Joel Blomqvist? I don't know. I mean, he certainly flashed in those first few appearances in the NHL level this season. He's done some good things in the minor leagues. He didn't look like an NHL goalie his last 4 or 5 appearances with the Penguins. He's still young. He needs time to develop, and he certainly was not put in a position to succeed. My God, his first few games, he was facing 50 shots in Edmonton, for God's sake. I mean, what do you expect? So the jury's very much out on him, as it is Miroshov. But I wonder about Blomqvist, what the future is for him. And ideally, you don't want 2 guys to be your goalies who are both really young. You'd like to have that veteran backup with Miroshov in a perfect world, but Jari's too expensive to be that guy. I don't know if Ned's good enough to be that guy. And I don't know, Blomqvist obviously isn't going to be some experienced veteran. So even though it's good that the Penguins have all these goaltending options, I still think it's fair to say they have a lot of decisions to make.
You think they, though, could treat Jari's contract as just like a sunk cost? You know what I mean? Like, ignore his salary and just be like, yeah, you know what? He might be the best option. Like, in a perfect world, in my opinion, Miroshov's the starter, Jari's the backup, and Ned's down in Wilkes-Barre with Blomqvist. With Blomqvist probably getting the lion's share of the work just to get him ready to come up. But we'll see what happens.
It's possible. I mean, listen, you can look at Stanley Cup teams. and go through rosters and find guys who were overpaid. There were bad contracts on cup teams. Every team has bad contracts. That doesn't mean that the players, Eric Carlson has a bad contract. That doesn't mean he can't help you in some ways. And you can go down the line. Every team has them, and it doesn't mean that you just get rid of Jari. You have to do what's best for the organization. And who knows? There is so much bad goaltending around the league right now. You look at Jari's numbers, the way he played in the last month. What if he goes and has a great world championship, just theoretically, Is there one team out there this summer that says, you know what? If you would retain $1 million of that, we'll give him a shot for the next 3 years. Maybe not, but it's conceivable. It's something the Penguins have to be aware of. And they have all those draft picks, too. They can always throw a sweetener or two to a team that might be willing to take a chance on Jari. So that's something to keep in mind. But we've also seen Jari play very well at times in his career. You don't go to 2 All-Star games by accident. Maybe he has figured something out in this latest time down in Wilkes-Barre. I don't know. Maybe it's a fluke. I have a hard time taking anything too seriously that I see in the last month of the season when the pressure's generally off. Like, that's something we have to consider. It's like there's always in baseball guys who get hot in September after all the minor league pitchers come up and they're facing bad pitching and they hit 10 home runs in September. Oh, that guy might be a star. No, he's not. He was just facing guys who weren't as good. Yeah, there's lots of things to consider there. But Jari playing well can only help the Penguins in a number of different ways.
I think Jari with a 3 points higher than the average, with people knowing that no one is serving up pizzas like the Pittsburgh Penguins defense, and the 2-on-1s he faces, and just the bad net front play that he has to deal with. I think he's marketable right now. I think there is a sucker out there that may take a flyer on him, and especially with the extra draft picks we have available to sweeten the deal. I think he could go. And I think a bigger question, or maybe even a sadder answer, is that might be a worse thing. I mean, it might be like I think the best scenario is him and Maryshev. That to me is the best scenario. And then if they both play pretty good, we get 3 capable defensemen. Then maybe at the deadline, Jari goes next year, and then maybe a Bloomquist comes up or somebody else, or we find the backup that we can get from the Jari trade and a goalie swap. That to me is the best case scenario.
I will say Jari and Miroshov are absolutely their 2 most physically gifted goaltenders. Those are the 2 guys with the highest ceilings, no question. I think Jari's going to be 30, so we kind of know what he is at this point, but it's not like he doesn't have talent. That is true. And I've said this on this podcast all season. I've written it in The Athletic all season too. I have a very difficult time gauging the Penguins goaltenders. Now, I know what the organization has thought of Jari this season because they've sent him to Wilkes-Barre not once but twice. Now, that tells you that whether it's stuff behind the scenes, stuff they may understand in terms of watching goaltenders and technical stuff that maybe we don't understand because we're not goalies, and it's just a hard thing to figure out, frankly, for novices like us when it comes to goaltending. Obviously, they weren't happy with him. But when you watch this blue line play, when you see how pathetic this team is defensively at times, like, it really is hard to gauge just where these goaltenders are. Like, if Jari was playing behind a good team, would he be okay? Would he be pretty solid? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I guess it's worth considering because teams, how many times has a team given up a breakaway 15 seconds into a game? Like, it's unbelievable. I know we talk about, the first shot, first goal thing, and they've done, 14 times or whatever it is. But if you go back and look, and I'm not defending the goaltending per se, but go back and look at those 14 goals. Like 11 of them were either breakaways or 2-on-1s or tap-ins or deflections or really tough. Like, they actually weren't bad goals for the goaltenders to give up very often. This is a team that is horrible defensively, and as much credit as I give Crosby and the leadership and the coaching, I like Mike Sullivan. I think he's a great coach. They often look woefully unprepared at the beginning of games. The way they give up opportunities seconds into the game, we've seen it all season long. It's not a coincidence at this point, and it makes it hard to evaluate just where the goaltenders are.
Oh, and it's Sid and Rust on the ice for the first goal of the game too.
Yeah,
it's not the fourth line.
No.
The other thing is, I think since his latest recall, I think there's only really been one Jari goal let in that was like, oh, it's like the Sega glitch. Like, how'd that go in? They've all basically been legitimate goals, as opposed to when he was sent down the second time. There were shots that, like, it was like he was letting beach balls go past him.
Yeah,
No.
not to talk Pirates, but it kind of reminded me of Pedro Alvarez when he couldn't catch a ball at first base. You know what I mean? Where you're like, really?
Never talk about the Pirates.
No, it's clearly it's been in his head at times. I mean, there's no doubting that. That's for sure. So it's, I don't know. It's, the point is, in terms of goal prevention, the Penguins have so many issues, and to identify and pinpoint which each one is. That's why Kyle Dubas is making the big bucks. But I think the blue line could look dramatically different next season. And the goaltending, I don't know how different the goaltending could look, because I don't know that they can necessarily get rid of any of these guys, and they do have young guys on the way. So you know, we kind of know who the Penguins goaltenders organizationally will be come September, even though Jari is a bit of an X factor there. The blue line, to me, like, would they like to trade Carlson? I think so, given his contract and how he's performed. Is Letang's contract a problem right now? You betcha. It's a big problem, because he is terrible right now, and he's not getting any younger. I don't think Matt Grzelcyk comes back next season, but they don't really have anyone else on the left side other than Ryan Shea, who's an okay third pairing guy, but that's about what he is. That blue line, man, oh man, does it need work.
Yeah, like you wrote about the Letang and Grzelcyk pairing is just awful. Like, if you've never watched hockey before, you know, you look at it and be like, those guys shouldn't be out there. Like, what are they doing out there? So
I don't understand Carlson's, every time he plays the puck wrong, he just runs right at the guy. The man doesn't retreat. I mean, that's great for an army. It's terrible for a defenseman. I'm not. I mean, it's not like he's okay. He's closing gaps. He's not giving space. He's just skating right at the guy. Like, here, just go around me, because I'm going to get this over with.
He just tries to steal the puck like he's playing against a bunch of 10-year-olds or something. He does it all the time. And we saw Letang yesterday in the Morgan Geekie goal just drift over to the center of the ice for no reason at all. It's just a 2-on-2, and he just gives him a wide open shot because he's drifting to the center of the ice. He does it a lot, like, for no reason. Maybe he could get away with that when he was 22, the way he could skate then. He certainly can't anymore. You could make an argument, and this is a team that has no bottom six, and a team that has an old top six, and a team that has a lot of question marks in goal. You could make an argument, though, and a very valid one, that the single biggest problem with this team this season is Carlson and Letang. Their two highest paid defensemen, who've just been awful. And when your two highest paid defensemen, two guys who are combining to count more than $16 million against the cap, when they've been that ineffective and that horrible in the defensive zone, that's hard to recover from, guys.
I don't even think it's an argument. I think it's a fact. I think the sad thing is Letang is worse than Carlson. Even with what I just said about how he steps up and tries to steal the puck, you made the great point. You look like he's trying to take on a 10-year-old. I still think he brings a little bit of offense, and a little bit of swagger. Letang gets beat continually and brings none of the offense, and is now taking bad penalties. Like, he's out to lunch. I know there's only like 2 more games left, or 1 more game now, but it was almost where, like, he almost needed a Anthony Duclair. Like, hey, man, just take a break. Go to California for a week. We're not making the playoffs anyway. Like, there's something legitimately wrong with his game that he's this bad.
Yeah, no, he is incredibly bad the last few weeks. This is the worst hockey we've ever seen him play. And you're right, Carlson will drive you nuts because he just does idiotic things in the defensive zone on a regular basis. But that's always kind of been who he is. He still does do a couple of things every game in the offensive zone, or make a couple of passes like, whoa, like you can still see there's real talent there. We saw it in the Four Nations when he was one of Sweden's best players. Letang, though, even though he does have, I think, double digits in goals this season, he does not control play in the offensive zone the way he once did, clearly. And his defensive work, which actually I think used to be a little underappreciated. Like, when Letang was at his best, he was a really good one-on-one defender. He's so strong and such of a great skater. Did a lot of things really well. This season, especially the last month or 2 months, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's not close to the player he once was, and he's still receiving big minutes. And I get it. Who else are you going to give those minutes to? It's not like Mike Sullivan has many options here. But guys, he has 3 years left on his deal. Like, he turns 38 next week. This is a real problem because he just all of a sudden it looks like age is starting to catch up to him. He's not the skater he was. If you take away Chris's physical attributes, man, you've got a real problem because he's just not a cerebral player. We know this.
Oh, Ron Hextall, the gift that keeps on giving. But that's the thing, it's like it's one thing to be able to get back on a 2-on-1, make it a 2-on-2. It's what I've said recently is he just gets beat from the corner to the front of the net. And that's what's killing us. And then you have Carlson, who has no physicality in front of the net. So, and then Grizzly, who's the size of a lawn ornament. So it's like we have no one in front of it. That's as much good things as Dubas has done this year. And I think he's done some great work this year. I just think giving up on Desharnais for a 5th-round pick was disgusting. There's no way that he couldn't be on this team and at least bring some semblance of a net front presence on defense. I mean, whatever they do, I just watching Branson yesterday for the BJs was like, God, we could just use him, and he can't even move.
No, it's a real problem. Like I pretty much hate everything about their blue line right now. I like Ryan Shea's an okay 3rd pairing guy, I guess. Timmons might be an okay 3rd pairing guy. Like, all right, that's fine. Other than that, Letang and Carlson are atrocious right now. Grizz looks fine on the power play, but I don't know that there's any point in bringing him back because he's not very good otherwise. It's just a mess, and I don't understand. And I haven't asked Mike Sullivan this. Maybe I will this week. They keep playing Letang and Grizzlick together. Like, I thought Grizzlick and Carlson were okay together. Letang and Grizzlick are a disaster. I mean, they're absolutely awful together. They were on the ice, I think, for 3 goals against yesterday. It's something we're seeing every game. So that blue line needs an overhaul. I don't know if Harrison Brunick will be ready to be on the team next season or not. We know they love him. They've got some real prospects with him and Emil Pianiemi and Finn Harding. So they've got some people in the pipeline on the way in the next year or two, but they still need just a couple of legitimate veteran, solid NHL defensemen. And they've got the money to do it this offseason. If they're going to spend any money this summer, I would imagine the blue line is where they will start. And I cannot disagree with that decision.
Well, the waiver wire for like 1 week this year was like everyone on the wire was better than who the Penguins had on the ice. They had Dante Fabro was on the wire. Bortuzzo, our old buddy, was on the wire. Your buddy, the famous number 6 defenseman for the Penguins forever. I'm spacing his name right now. Yeah, Rarito was on the wire. They all could be there. They all would be better than what we have right now.
And they let John Ludwig go, who I thought. They let Ludwig go, who I thought was kind of an interesting guy. Certainly added some physicality. So, you know how it is, guys. I don't care how talented your forwards are, who your goalies are. If you don't have a decent defense core, you have nothing in this league. And when you look at the best teams in the league and where their blue lines are, and then you look at the Penguins, that's the single biggest difference between the Penguins and these other teams. Like, the Penguins have a top 6, especially if McGroarty and Koivunen, if they are who we think they are moving forward, they're going to have a pretty good top 6. Plenty of options on the power play. They've got some talent in goal. We'll see if they figure it out. But their blue line is so far removed from being NHL competent. It's probably the worst blue line in the league right now. I mean, that's something you can't always rebuild overnight. But man, oh man, is it a problem?
It's such lazy reporting and such Steeler fan mentality, or you're just sad sack of shit Pirate fan mentality, that it's all the old guys on the team. Other than Letang, it's certainly not Crosby, Malkin, and Rust's fault or Raquel's fault.
No.
And it's not even the bottom 8. Is the bottom 6, is it the Jordan Stahl 3rd line, or is it the Islanders vaunted 4th line, or is it Tampa Bay's 4th line of a couple years ago? No. But you know what? Doers and those guys, they're not, and Blake Lizotte, they're not the problem.
Even Kevin Hayes has 14 goals. I mean, he's been okay.
Yeah. The problem is Christopher Letang and Erik Karlsson. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah. You put Bortuzzo and Ruido on this team. instead of those two, you're not going to win the Stanley Cup, but you're probably an 8 seed. Like you're a wild card. You know what I mean? Like it's just that it's really that bad. Like that's what I thought about yesterday when I watched the game. I was like, I'm so glad you wrote about it, Josh, because I was like watching Letang and Grizzly out there together. Literally, you're like, these two people should not watch. Like, if my mom sat down and watched the game, she'd be like, why are those guys on the ice? Like, they shouldn't be in the NHL. That's how bad they looked.
No, it's a major problem for the Penguins moving forward. And and I'm not saying this to knock Chris, but look at the 2017 team that won the Cup without him. That wasn't a great blue line. You didn't have star power. You just had a bunch of solid NHL defensemen, whether Ian Cole and Ron Hainsey and Brian Dumoulin and Trevor Daley, Justin Schultz. These aren't stars, but they're solid veteran guys who in general knew how to play defense a little bit. That goes a long way. It really does. And I realize the forwards on this team aren't nearly as good as what they had then. I understand that. And that team had two great goaltenders. That makes a difference too. But when I look at the Penguins positionally, like the blue line, it's just the ultimate sore thumb right now. They have to do something pretty quickly here.
It's so much better just to have 6 between 2 and 4s than to have 2 aging, pathetic number 1s and a bunch of number 7s.
That's basically what they have right now. I mean, and those aging number 1s were never great defensively to begin with.
Yeah.
So now you have a team that needs its goaltenders to be protected a little bit, and they're not interested in doing that or not capable of doing it in Letang's case, I think. So if you're Kyle Dubas, you got 23, 24 million to spend this summer. So you can go get a couple of good defensemen if you want. But I think it's a bigger deal to try to get rid of some of the, Carlson and Letang, between one of those two guys, they both have no trade clauses. If you bring both of them back next season in the same roles, I don't know how serious you can feel about winning, because they're not going to get better at this stage. And if you're going to keep those two guys, then you're only going to have so much money to spend elsewhere. I'm not blaming those two for everything. The Penguins have a lot of problems, but man, are those two guys a big problem.
I want to get positive. I feel like we've been sad for 27 minutes and 45 seconds.
Give or take.
I really, really think Kovanen has been incredible. I think he's the brightest spot I've seen. I've even enjoyed his game more than when Jake came up. Jake scored his goals, but he was never the playmaker that this kid is. This kid really is a top 6. He's not a Crosby creation. He's got mad skills.
He does. Like, he hasn't scored a goal yet, but that's going to come. And boy, he's passing the eye test right now, Joe. He sees the ice so well. I really think Koivunen, if nothing less, will be a fixture on the power play moving forward. Like, he's just a natural power play guy, the way he sees the ice, the way he distributes the puck. And he can shoot the puck. The goals will come. I don't know that he'll ever be like a 40-goal guy or anything like that, but I could see him being like a 20, 25-goal guy, but really excelling in terms of playmaking and the way he can distribute the puck. He just doesn't look out of place at all. I think when the first goal comes, whether it be against Washington or next season, whatever it is, the goals will start coming at that point. He and McGroarty both. It's a shame that Rucker's out for the year because he was doing a lot of good things as well. But I think the Penguins feel like they really have found something in those two. Maybe they aren't superstars, but at worst, they're middle 6 wingers, good ones, who are also good defensively and do all the little things. I really think they have something in those two guys, and that's a credit to Kyle Dubas. He's the one who is solely responsible for bringing both of them in, along with Harrison Brunick and a lot of the other talented young guys that Pittsburgh's about to become introduced to. Koivunen's an exciting guy. Every game you watch him, you feel like he's getting better and better, don't you, Joe?
Yeah. He jumps off the screen.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him on the power play with Rusty. Like, I feel like Rusty could set another career high next year if you have somebody that can pass like that and set up Mr. Loves to shoot.
It looks like he's playing in the 90s again. Like, that's how talented he is. It looks like he has a lot of ice to work with. He's seen guys in the back of his head. He's moving the puck. It's just fun. And it really is a crying shame that McGroarty got hit with that puck, because he was also so fun to watch. We blew him up last week in a good way, but just how positionally solid he was, getting physical. He's getting some points, and he those two guys make me happy about the future. They really do.
No, I mean that's a start. The Penguins haven't had guys like that in years, literally.
No, what do you think about revamping? Like, you kind of wrote about that, but like that, this has changed the timeline, right?
Theoretically, I mean, listen, I don't know that these two guys, like I said, I don't think they're superstars. But all of a sudden, you've got a couple of pieces that you feel really good about. It might expedite things a little bit for the Penguins. I'm fascinated to see what happens this summer, to see how aggressive Kyle gets, because my sense for most of the season had been, next season might be another tough one. And then in the summer of 26, that might be when they get really aggressive in terms of signing free agents and making different moves. But now you look at it, it's like, well, these two guys are maybe a little ahead of schedule. And Harrison Brunick looks like he's ahead of schedule. And if Murashov's ready sooner rather than later, then all of a sudden, that could be theoretically a year from now 4 legitimate pieces on your team that you didn't have a year earlier. That does theoretically change things. But we could talk for hours about the decisions that Dubas has to make this summer and how interesting it is. What do you do with Carlson and Letang? We assume Gino's retiring after next year. We don't know that. Do you leave Gino at center? Do you try Novak at center and put Gino away? There's a million different things they can do. Some of that's Kyle's decision. Some of it's Mike Sullivan's. But they've got more pieces to work with moving forward than they did a few months ago. That's for sure.
That's another piece I just totally forgot about, the Tommy Novak story.
I'm old enough to remember when the Penguins traded for him, Joe. He played, a game and a half, got hurt in Minnesota, and he's been shut down for the season.
He looked great in that minute and a half.
He's got talent, though. You could see the hands and the speed on display for sure.
And Sully even used him with Sid and Gino on the one post penalty kill shift. So there's some respect, because a lot of people are worried about if Sully uses younger guys, and Sully's kind of bite into the Tommy Novak story. It was interesting seeing Tomasino take a twirl yesterday, and I thought Borky made a nice point that he could have just phoned it in the rest of the year, but he wanted to get out there and prove a point that he wants to be a Penguin. I thought that was a nice move. And it was nice of Sullivan to play him instead of Matt Nieto.
It was. Tomasino's another guy. He's such of an X factor to me. He's got talent. He can skate. He's got a pair of hands. Some games he just disappears. And there's, some facets. He doesn't do the little things very well. He's not very good on the boards. He's, but then when he scores a goal, it's always a pretty goal. Like, you see the pair of hands that he has. So he's a really interesting guy moving forward. He was certainly worth taking a chance on, because you can see the talent that he has. And he's still, I think he's 23, maybe. He's still a kid. So maybe he puts it all together. And if he does, he could be an effective player for the Penguins for sure. But they've just got so many guys on this roster who are question marks. And that's tough. And some difficult decisions will have to be made this summer and moving forward. But he's another one. Like, they've got pieces now. They've got some intriguing pieces. That's something that we couldn't really say about them where they were a couple of years ago. So I think they're on a good path here, better than they were.
Yeah, and not to make this up, not that we're hinging on Tomasino so much, but I really am curious to see. I feel like Sullivan's a really good coach for a player like that. Somebody who's got the talent but needs kind of like those rougher edges polished and everything like that. I just, all season I've been thinking, I really want to see him go through a training camp. You know what I mean? Like, instead of coming mid-season and, really get a chance for Sullivan to sit down and tell him how he wants to play moving forward. But yeah, I feel good about the future. And the thing that makes me sad, I don't know if you guys have thought of this, like, I think best case scenario, we make the playoffs next year and then we're set up for a couple years of contending. And it really makes me sad to think about Gino only being there for like that last, like, like a little quick, whimper into the playoffs, and then he's gone, and then Sid doing it by himself. It would be hard as a Pens fan to sit there, my emotional side. It'd be hard to see Gino go.
Well, I get that, but and he's been better lately in general, but you can't keep him forever. That's just the way it is. And while I think he's still a perfectly okay number 2 line player, I'd be surprised if he plays beyond next season. I think that's probably it. He told me before the season, he said, got to make playoffs one more time, got to be in playoffs. Like it's important to him. So I know next season, if it is his last, he certainly wouldn't want it to end in the regular season. And who knows? The Penguins, like like we've said, this first 35 minutes, if they want to improve the blue line, like could they be a playoff team next year? Sure. Like they could. It's possible. I assume the East will get better from where it is right now. They could get better. Will they be a cup contender? No, I can't imagine that. But for guys like Gino and Sid and Letang, I mean, I'm sure it would kill those guys if they never got another crack at the playoffs after, especially the way they lost to the Rangers in a series they really should have won in 22. I know they don't want that to be their last playoff series.
Oh, the Evan Rodriguez special. That was
It always comes up. I know.
Yeah, somehow it comes up. Well, hey, that'll do it for the first, segment here. We do have to, alert you guys that you should not text and drive because Mr. Bill Neofis has information about that. And Josh, did he give you any other information?
Well, I mean, not really, but he's been busy. It's his busy time of year, and so it's still April, so the information is still good. Bill's our great sponsor, neofisinsurance.com. If you need insurance of any kind, it doesn't matter what it is because they literally do everything. Give our man Bill a call. I'll tell you his number right off the bat. It's 412-364-3388. It's neofisinsurance.com. They are located conveniently in the North Hills. And yes, Bill does want to remind everybody April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. And it's true. I was driving home from Canada over the weekend. I went to see my kids, and I'm driving home yesterday, and I see people on their phones like this driving. It's unbelievable if you pay attention. I mean, we've all been guilty of it on the highway. It's it's an epidemic in this country. And April is Driving Awareness Month. So Bill always likes to remind everybody, put a do not disturb message on your phone. Just put the phone down. It can always wait a few minutes. And we kind of take those words for granted sometimes, but it's true. Let's be honest. So Bill's not just a good insurance man. He actually cares about people, which is one of my favorite things about him. So give them a call. We'll give you the number one more time if you need any kind of insurance. Neofis Insurance, 412-364-3388.
Thank you, Bill. And so we've been talking a lot about, the end of an era with Gino, Letang, Crosby, all that kind of stuff. On a somber note, Ray Shero passing away surprisingly, which sounds like it was a pretty brief illness and an aggressive one. So it just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know if many people even knew he was really ill, and kind of took the hockey world by surprise. And it made me think about, and reading all the articles about him, just the memories of those teams and everything like that. I remember Jim Rutherford after the 2016 Cup on the ice in San Jose saying in a post-game interview, he said, I really want to take a moment to thank Ray Shero and Craig Patrick for what they did to contribute for this. And general manager is kind of one of those weird things where, like, even though you're not the GM at the time, there's a lot of pride in winning, so even though Ray Shero technically only won one Stanley Cup with the Penguins, huge imprint and huge reason as to why there's 3 additional banners hanging in that building. And Josh, you could speak because you knew him personally. So it sounds like he was a great man as well.
He was. When I received a text from somebody telling me that Ray had passed away last week, I literally dropped my phone. I didn't know he was sick. Nobody knew. And from what I've been told, like the number of people who knew, like we're talking like, a couple of family members, like his very close family and 1 or 2 friends, that was it. That's how Ray was. He was, kind of a private guy and didn't like to make things about himself. And he died the way he lived in that way. Really good guy. Everybody likes Ray. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Ray Shero. And if you go back and look at the job he did as Penguins general manager, look at the rosters he gave the Penguins from 2008 until 2014. Oh my God. It's amazing they only won 1 cup because those were their best rosters. I would argue those rosters were probably better than the 16 and 17 rosters. I mean, that's how much pure talent he gave those teams. And he was betrayed by Sidney Crosby's concussions and by a couple of Fleury meltdowns. and maybe Bilesma wasn't the right coach anymore, and
Yep.
and he was loyal to Dan to the point that it cost him his job as well. But Ray Shero was a great GM, and by the way, he drafted Matt Murray, he drafted Brian Rust, he drafted Jake Gensel. That guy knew what he was doing. I mean, there is a legacy there, and Jim meant that when he wanted to include Ray Shero in those celebrations, because Jim knew what a great GM Ray was. And when you bring up those two, I always go back to the Jordan Stahl trade. Everybody knew Jordan Stahl wanted to play in Carolina with his brother. Everybody knew. And thus, Ray Shero had no leverage at all. Jim Rutherford could have screwed the hell out of him in that trade, and he didn't. He gave him the 8th overall pick and Brian Dumoulin and Brandon Sutter anyway. And I remember Ray telling me afterwards, he said, a lot of GMs wouldn't have done that. A lot of guys would have used that leverage and just screwed me. And he said, Jim's a good guy, and he would never have done that. And those two, I think maybe partially because of that trade, they always had a real friendship and a bond. And Jim was really, I talked with Jim and Billy Guerin, Tom Fitzgerald. They were all just absolutely devastated. And I talked with Dan Bilesma. We talked on the phone for 15 minutes for an article I wrote last week, and Dan was literally in tears the whole time. You could tell that just the personal mark that Ray left on people was a really big deal.
Great man, Ray Shero, and a great GM. I mean, we were blessed. We had Craig Patrick, Ray Shero, and then JR.
How about that? Huh?
And then we're off the cliff.
The streak ends abruptly after Jim Rutherford. But
and taking over for Craig Patrick wasn't easy, because I think he was Ray was just the assistant GM in Nashville. So to take the reins from literally a Hockey Hall of Famer and a legend, and he made those Penguin teams better. I thank Disco for his Stanley Cup, but I definitely think we could have been coached better.
And also play Jerome McGinley in the right position. That might have helped. He delivers you a 600 goal scorer, and you put him in the wrong spot.
On the wrong side. But the other thing too that I always liked about Ray, and me, I'm old school. He always valued toughness. I know because his father was Fred Shero, but he always valued having a tough team, and that was the first thing he did when he came here. Remember, he brought in the Root 2s and the other guys. It just made us a harder team to play against. And I always think that when you have a young team or a team that's up and coming, you need to just have guys that aren't going to take any shit from anybody, and kind of puts a little 10 pounds and some gray hairs on everybody.
A little Hal Gill action.
Yeah, no, Ray got it. I mean, and Ray was a lot like Jim Rutherford in that, like, he was really aggressive himself. Jim always gets that reputation for being the gunslinger, but Ray's the one that went out and got Marian Hossa in 2008. He's the one who went out and got Iginla. He made a lot of very big, crucial trades that not everybody liked at first, but more times than not they worked out. It's a shame that he only won one cup, really, because if you look at the job he did, I go back and look at the moves he made. He didn't screw up much at all. I mean, this is the guy who traded Alex Goligoski for Matt Niskanen and James Neal, for God's sake. He made so many good deals. I mean, he was. I wouldn't have wanted to answer the phone if he was calling to make a trade with me.
I have a great thought about that. Do you think he was that aggressive because 66 was in the big office, and Mario wanted to win more than anybody? And Mario always thought he could win.
May have played a role. Like I know the initial plan that year wasn't to go for Hossa, and Mario and Ron Burkle sat down with Ray, and they all kind of said, we're way better than we thought. Like, we didn't think we'd be this good this fast. Like, what can we do? And Shero said, well, go get Marian Hossa if you want. And, yeah, why not? And, listen, the Penguins came closer to winning the cup that year than people remember. I mean, it took everything from a great Detroit team to hold the Penguins off in 6. So they got that close to winning the cup that season. And then he, goes on and gets Billy Guerin and Pascal Dupuis and, Chris Kunitz. I mean, the names go on and on. These are giants in Penguins history that he acquired. And the fact that he didn't always have first-round picks, and he traded a lot of prospects. He's trying to win, but he still drafted the likes of Matt Murray and Brian Rust and Jake Gensel, for God's sake. I mean, come on. This tells you that he he knew what he was doing in every facet of the job. He was just a machine.
Yeah, I think I would probably, I think this was Madden that said, this is a long time ago. This is whenever the Hosa trade happened. It said something along the lines of like, you can stave off the selling the future for the present if you draft well after, in the middle rounds. And like you just pointed out, I mean, he did a fantastic job of that. Yeah, the reading all those articles was just like, I mean, Josh, I think you did like 3 of them, but there were tons of Ray Shiro articles, and it just seemed like the players too had like a ton of respect for him.
Oh yeah, no, they did. But one, I mentioned this in an article. One memory I have, Joe, I wish you could have been there to see it. I'm sure it would have amused you. When the Penguins were melting down against the Flyers in 2012, in that infamous playoff series. It was game 3, was a Sunday afternoon in Philly. That was where they just lost their minds completely. 3 guys got suspended after that game. Just the ultimate melee in game 3. And I'm outside of the team bus late that afternoon in Philly. And I see Ray Shiro must have been a 20 or 30-minute conversation with Chris Letang. And I'm like trying real hard. I got my ear turned trying to see if I could hear what's being said. Chris wasn't talking at all. It was all Ray. And I got the gist of it. The gist of it was you got to grow up. Like you can't lose your mind every time a call goes against you or somebody throws a dirty hit against you. Like if you want to be a great player in this league, you gotta grow up at some point. It's time. I don't care if you've already won a cup or not. And I think Chris got the message eventually. But Ray was like that. He would pull players aside and just very quietly, he wouldn't put them down. He wouldn't use abusive language with them or anything like that. He would just be very matter of fact. And Chris said it when we asked him about Ray. He said he turned us into men. And you don't hear players say that kind of stuff about general managers very often, which tells you there was more of a personal feel to him than just making trades.
He can say what he wants, but I think it took Mike Sullivan to turn him into men. And of the big 3, I still think Letang has some hair to grow on his nuts as far as he melted down Sunday to me in this game.
Well, he got it together in the 16 playoffs. I'll give him credit for that. But no, you make a point. But you look at it from Ray's standpoint too. Like he had all these talented guys, but they were kids. And that was something he had to deal with, and just dealing with Sid's concussions. Like as a general manager, it must have been maddening. Like, God, I've got the best player in the world. I want him on the damn ice, but he never forced Sid back. He never rushed him back. I covered that, God, every single day for a year, and it was so clear to me by the end that Ray Shiro, yeah, he wanted to win, but he cared more about Sid on a personal level than he did about Sid, the hockey player. And I don't think every GM would have been wired that way.
They're certainly not, because look at Bobby Clark. They literally ran Lindros out of Philadelphia for concussions.
Hey, you got to play Game 7 against Jersey. So if Scott Stevens lights you up, too bad, and that's exactly what happened. That's right.
Yeah, that's really good point. Really good point by you, Joe. Well, our Ray Shiro, R.I.P. We are forever in debt to him for what he did for the organization, and like we said, it continues to do for the organization because we're still feeling we got the rusty razor. I mean, Joe's gonna hang a Ray Shiro banner in his house because of rusty. But
hey, Corey, we may have not seen the end of Matt Murray.
That's true. That's a good point. How does
veteran backup?
A solid veteran backup if he's healthy, if the poor kid can hold it together health wise. So a headline that popped out there in the NHL was that this is the first time, and we've talked all season about how the East is kind of like terrible, and this is the first time that the Penguins, the Bruins, and the Rangers are all collectively not in the playoffs. And the weird thing is, if you've been tracking whether or not the Rangers are going to retain that pick or not, all of a sudden the Rangers are only one position away from us in the draft. They're 11th overall. We're 9th in the draft. So it's wild to see.
I am fascinated by what's going on with the Rangers. That team on paper should be so much better than what it is. They are clearly a disaster in that dressing room. I don't expect the head coach to survive the next few days. I wonder about the general manager as well. and I, more than anything, as it pertains to the Penguins, can't wait to see what happens with that pick. Do the Rangers say, this is just a 1-year lull, we're going to be good next year, so we're going to give Pittsburgh that pick now, or do they say, we're going to give Pittsburgh that pick the next year, we'll keep the good one now because we'll be way better next year. I don't know. I mean, who knows what they're thinking? Who knows who's even going to be making that decision in a few weeks for the Rangers? But I think the Rangers and Vancouver are clearly the two most disappointing teams in hockey this season.
Yes, I hope they swap coaches.
Just to keep Rick away from Philly. That's right.
Absolutely. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
I hope Dolan just writes a check, makes an offer that Rick can't refuse.
Yeah, that would be okay. I think everybody could live with that. And I think the Rangers could use some Rick Tocchet, perhaps. There's, I've never seen a team, at least not for a long time, that like actively looked like it disliked each other when I watched them play more than the Rangers.
What's funny, the Rangers have like about 9 Elias Petterssons. Rick's going to go from 1 to 9.
That's true. That team is so soft in front of its net. I was watching the highlights of their game the other night when they forget how many goals. They gave up 8 goals, I think, against somebody. I forget who it was now. But they've got problems. And the Rangers, I don't know. They could be better next season with the talent they have and the goalie they have. Who knows? Maybe they're a playoff team next year. They could be. But they could also completely plummet. Because that's an older team than people realize. Even Panarin's like 32 or 33 now, I think.
Yeah.
They are not a young team. And if this is suddenly the direction they're headed in, and if the East does get better next year, which I suspect it will, I don't know. I could see the floor is really low for them, and the ceiling is still pretty high. There's a strange team.
I agree with you, and I beat this horse to death a lot, but I think there's going to be, in 20 years, people are going to look back and go, who the hell was Adam Fox? I think that was the worst Norris Trophy winner in my lifetime. It's more evident every day that he just stole that trophy because he was in New York.
He's a nice player. He's very good on the power play, but I agree with you. I've always found him to be extremely overrated. For anybody to mention him in the same breath as Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes, give me a break. I can think of 10 other defensemen I would take before Adam Fox, just off the top of my head. He's a nice player, but he is not the superstar that he's made out to be. And that does happen a lot in the New York market. There's no question. There are many examples over the years of good players being elevated to great category because of where they play.
Yes. I mean, we can dissect the rig because I always thought their blue line was worse than the sum of their parts.
Yes.
When you look at all of them individually, I know Lindgren's gone now, but I like Lindgren. I love Keandre Miller.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was amazing. He's had a terrible year.
Yeah.
And the Schneider kid's good, and Trouba was always Trouba. Some of these guys aren't there anymore, but it was always they on paper they should be a top 5-6 defense, but they're just not. And I would say because they just don't like playing defense. They like being up ice or making open ice hits or playing power plays. They don't like clearing their net. They don't like doing board work. They're just all prima donnas in a way. I mean, who knows? And they probably we don't have a chance at him. But there's a reclamation project in Keandre Miller, and someone's going to get that chance. And
he used to look like a star against the Penguins every time they play him.
Yes. He's kind of like a more athletic, if possible, Seth Jones.
No, I mean, he certainly has all kinds of talent. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't know. They just seem like a poorly run organization and a poorly coached team. I think they need a complete overhaul sooner rather than later, quite frankly. But I didn't see this coming. Remember, guys, opening night when they look like the Globetrotters in Pittsburgh? I'm thinking, oh man, this might be the year for them. They made it to the Final Four last year. This team's really freaking good. And all of a sudden the wheels just fell off and they never got back on.
Hey, I picked them to win the East. Here, how about this? How about this? We saw that, and then we also saw us absolutely destroy the Habs. The Habs are going to be in the playoffs.
No, gave up 9 goals against the Penguins, right? I mean, in Montreal.
On a Friday night. I'll never forget where I was at. It was incredible. I was in Fort Myers in a hotel watching the game. I'm like, this is incredible.
I know.
They looked really bad. Like, I mean, because we knew we weren't good then. Like at that point, we were like, okay, we know how this season's going to go. It was only a couple games in or whatever, but we knew it wasn't going to be great. We're like, well, at least we're not those guys.
I thought Marty St. Louis might get fired. Now he might be coach of the year. That happened in a hurry.
Well,
yeah.
This is the first year since 1967 that the Wings and the Bruins did not make the playoffs. So that's how upside down the Atlantic is.
No, it's amazing. I mean,
this
isn't good for TV ratings in America. I know that. I know ABC and TNT are like, oh God, no Pittsburgh, no Boston, no New York. This isn't no Chicago. Oh God,
Philly,
no Philly. This isn't great.
Detroit. There's no the top six. The top 6 regular cities in America. Or 7 with Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just TNT and ESPN. They like to send out these braggadocious emails when they get really good ratings after games. Like after the OV record breaker, they love to send them to the writers. I have a feeling we won't be getting many of those in the postseason. Not that there won't be some great series, because there will be, but they're just not really in traditional hockey markets, which TV networks hate.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than a disinterested Messier back at the studio either.
Oh God.
No, right. We have to get the defibrillator out on him to make sure he's still alive at the end of every period.
Well, he looks like he's in the crypt half the time anyway.
It's ever since you said that last year, Joe. That's all I can think about. Whenever you look at him, is he looks like the body that you visit at the funeral home. You know what I mean? Like, it looks human, but like a little different. Like something's off. How about the Bruins? Like, I would not. I mean, not that the Penguins are in the greatest shape in the world, but they're miles ahead of where the Bruins are going to be. That feels like a team that's going to be in trouble for a minute.
Yeah, I don't know what their prospect situation is, but there's not a lot of young talent on that team. And they were better than the sum of their parts for years. Like, really, it was 2 years ago, that incredible regular season, right? And you looked at their team on paper, it was like, it's okay. Nobody really knew how they were winning, and then Florida upset them in the first round, and it's really been downhill for the Bruins since then for the most part. Much like the Penguins, they made their run, but they're not going to be good for a while. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, what's funny, because I remember thinking that in the middle of the year, like Boston just wins those 3-2 games because they know how to win 3-2 games, and that's just the way they play. But then they ripped out, they ripped out Coyle and the Rat. Like that's the guys that learn how to play that way. I still can't believe they gave away the Rat for a second round pick.
I know.
It's just like, I mean, that because their whole winning is built on culture. It's not built on talent. They only have one guy other than Pasta. I mean, the young kid learned how to take a dive when Letang breathed on him, but other than that, I didn't see any talent whatsoever on that team anymore.
No, very little, and they've just always been hard to score against. That's always what's made them good. But even their defensive work isn't what it was. Now they've got a bit of a road ahead of them, and it's tough in that division because the Florida teams are so good, and they're going to be for a couple of years longer, I'm sure. And Toronto's a really good team, and Ottawa and Montreal all of a sudden put it together. Detroit's not terrible. Buffalo, like, I don't know what they are, but they're not terrible. They're playing pretty well. So all of a sudden, you look in that division, like Boston's clearly the 8th team, I think, right now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. They're at the bottom. I mean, they're at the bottom of the East, and it's just. Well, speaking, I mean, just the playoffs. I mean, we have Boston down there. We're talking about reshuffling everything. What do you guys think? I mean, Joe, you've got the Battle of Toronto and the Battle of Ontario that you not wanted, but. Toronto and Ottawa looks like that's going to happen. The Florida teams looks like that's going to happen. Dallas and Colorado.
That is going to happen.
That is happening. And it's, I mean, I'm excited. Like, it's going to be a great first round. It always is. But which one are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, I'm looking forward to the Dallas versus the Avalanche, because I think those teams are completely set up. And other than Heiskanen, they're all going to be healthy. I love Tampa, Florida, but I think there's some injured parts there, and I think Florida might be, just as we've seen, teams can't really go to the finals 3 years in a row. So I think Florida might be on a little gas. So I think two teams completely in their prime are the Avalanche and the Stars. And I will say this: we'll do our playoff preview next week. But I'll tell you, if Toronto doesn't win it this year, you might as well just throw Marner off that Sky Dome or wherever the hell that big building's called, because this is your chance, Toronto.
You know, it's
this,
funny.
This is it. I mean, you're gonna get the doormat Ottawa. You get your little brother Ottawa Senators. If they think when the Penguins used to play Columbus, oh, okay, we can all stay home and sleep in our beds and go kick somebody's ass. And then you're going to have an absolutely beat up Florida team. So, or Tampa, a team from Florida. So this, and then a very, very other, unless Pro stays healthy and the Capitals get their goaltending the way it's been, you're going to have a weak team from the Metro because the Devils are banged up, and Carolina. Regular season Rod, do some more pull-ups, Rod, bash some people on your way out the door. It's like, this is it, Toronto. This is it.
You're right. I mean, and they didn't really play great in February or March, but all of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, they've been pretty good. I watched their last couple of games. They've been really good. You're right. This is absolutely their chance. Ottawa's playing really well right now. Like, they'll be a pain in the ass in a playoff series, but Toronto certainly should beat them. And, moving forward, you're right. You get it. I think the Florida teams are the two best on paper, but they are going to be beat up. And Florida doesn't look right to me. They're not playing well right now at all. Tampa's interesting. But the bracket sets up nice for them. And you're right. You're going to get probably Carolina or Washington in the conference final. Like, I don't view those as legitimate cup teams, with all due respect to Washington's record. I think Carolina's a nice team, but no, things could not have worked out any better for Toronto, which entirely possible that the Sens just beat them in 6 in the first round, because that's the way things go for the Maple Leaf. But you got to like the draw for them, no doubt.
Yeah,
I'm taking Tampa Bay to win the East.
I might too. They're really good.
Peaking at the right time.
Nobody has more star power. They're healthy. They're playing well.
They basically have Vasilevsky back.
Nobody's talking about that. Like, he was not himself last season after the injury he dealt with. He's back to being Vasilevsky. That changes things quite a bit.
Yep, changes the calculus.
Yes.
So if you're a betting man or woman, you might want to heed Joe's advice. You might get a value pick there. Before we go, I wanted to ask you guys. So, a lot of people are talking with Ovi breaking Gretzky's record, and a lot of people, and I usually say, like, well, Gretzky was shooting against guys that had glorified shin pads on their legs. But then somebody brought up a point. They said, yeah, but they were using, used pieces of park benches to shoot hockey pucks with, like these heavy ass sticks. And not that Ovechkin doesn't have a great shot no matter what, but the sticks that they have nowadays are ridiculous. And, if Mario grew up using one of those sticks, he might, shoot a puck through the net every game. Do you guys think it was easier in one era or the other? Because the goaltending was maybe shoddier in the 80s. There was a ton of goals being scored. But the equipment technology is through the roof right now. And I don't know. I mean, I tend to think the 80s was easier, but it's worth debating. I'm just curious what you guys think.
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, we can play this game all day, and you can do it. Like, you can do it in other sports too, right? Like, Babe Ruth never had to face a black pitcher, never had to face a Latin pitcher, right? But he also was taking trains on road trips and didn't have any technology to help it. So you can look at it either way. In hockey, you're right. Gretzky, more than anybody, had the advantage of playing against terrible goaltenders and a ridiculously high scoring era. You can make the argument one of the reasons it was a ridiculously high scoring era was because of him. People were putting up numbers like that until he came around and the Oilers came around. So you can look at it either way. I say, and by the way, not cheap plug, I have an article coming in The Athletic tomorrow about who I think is the greatest goal scorer of all time. You could probably guess where I'm going, but I'll save the suspense for tomorrow. Ovechkin is the most durable goal scorer of all time. And there's something to be, what he's still doing at almost 40 is incredible. I mean, you just don't see this from anybody in the history of the sport. Do I think it's easier or harder in this era? I don't know. In some ways it is easier. But I will say, you can talk about the little goalies in the 80s. Well, if you played in the 80s or in the early 90s, you were going to get the shit kicked out of you all game. And there were never going to be penalties called. and you were going to take abuse on your body like we don't see these days at all. And that's something that I think people need to consider when they look, especially with what Mario dealt with. Gretzky, it wasn't as much, or Dave Semenko would murder you. But he dealt with some of that too. It was so different back then, the abuse that guys took. So I think that's something that goes largely ignored.
Yeah, I think that's my point, or my I don't know what I would say, whatever the word. I'm having trouble with the other words aren't hockey words. I think it's harder to score goals today than it was in 1985, but I think it's a lot easier to play hockey.
Yeah, that's a really
good way to put it.
That's a Joe. You should put the trademark that.
That's prophetic, Joe.
That's a great statement. That's
Wow.
That's really good. Because it is easier to play hockey. Yeah,
it
you
is.
can play hockey.
It's just literally everything Josh said. Just the physical abuse that other players would give to you, in the travel schedule. That they used to beat the hell out of each other for 60 minutes and then go fly commercial.
What do you think?
Now these guys play patty cake until the playoffs, and they fly private jets.
And referees actually do call penalties these days, even in the third period. I mean, much more than they did back then, for sure. And what do you think Mario or Gretzky would have done with no red line and 3-on-3 hockey? What do you think Mario would have done 3-on-3? Honestly, he would have been the most unstoppable force in the history of 3-on-3 by like him and Bobby Orr by a mile. So those two, never got to enjoy that. So these are things that we have to consider. But yes, goaltenders weren't as good then. Darren Pang was like 5'2". Yes, that is a real thing. It's a fair point. But you can play the game all day. So I really like to look at each individual player and compare him to his peers during the time in which he played. And if that guy was that much more dominant than everyone else, that gets my attention. Like the year McDavid had a couple of years ago, and he had like 30 or 40 more points than anyone else. Like that got my attention. If that guy's that much better than even McKinnon or Crosby this season, then okay. And you look at what Mario and Gretzky did compared to the rest of the league, got my attention. Look at what Ovechkin and Crosby did, gets your attention. So that's what separates them. But you can always make an argument for whoever you think is the best, but it's a very difficult thing to look at because every era really is that different.
Yeah, and by the way, callback. It made me think when we were talking about the garage league there. A callback, Joe. I realized last week when you were like, "Oh, why do you hate Bettman so much?" And I really put it on Quebec and him taking Quebec away, and it hit me later in the week. I was like, "Wait a minute." It's because of Mario retired because he under his reign, it became an absolute joke. Because I mean they beat you up in the 80s, but like you could still find open ice. It got so bad in the 90s, and the fact that in 96 did Lemieux have 69 goals? It's like that. I mean, go back and watch the 95, 96 Penguins, like unbelievable. The Francis Yager Lemieux, like
the score lords
in 2000. 2001, nobody was scoring. It was the dead puck era. Do you think anyone else would have come out of retirement after 3.5 years at age 35 and scored 35 goals in 43 games? Just throwing that out there. That's not a knock on Ovi or Gretzky. It's not, because I respect all those guys. In that era, to do what he did that season after not playing for 3.5 years, I don't care if he had Yager with him or not. That was unreal.
In Bettman's defense, he did come out of the lockout with all the rule changes, some of which I couldn't even stand, because then you couldn't breathe on a guy without having it was like a power play specialty league for about a year and a half. Now it's kind of sunk into normal, but remember when they came out, it literally cost about 40 defensemen their careers. Oh, you can't obstruct anymore in a back check.
Sid had like 50 power play assists the year he had 120 points or something. I was talking with him. He said, "God, that was great. My first couple of years, we'd have like 10 power plays a game." I said, "Yeah, I bet it was." I remember, and it was. I mean, there's too many, but I do think it was necessary at the time to get people to
absolutely. But it's crept back in. The old, the other defenseman comes over, just a little bump, just get in your way a little bit. They're
letting the interference get away. Yes. When a guy dumps the puck and the defenseman kind of gets in his way, they're letting them get away with that again. They didn't before. You're absolutely
right.
Yeah. But hey, we got one more game, and I'm really looking forward. I'm taking my nephew to the game. Go see Sid. Hopefully Ovi.
Hopefully Ovi plays.
Yeah, but even if Ovi's not there, I think he's gonna get quite the ovation in Pittsburgh, and
Yeah, it'll
and
be a cool thing to see.
it's gonna be a good, a good atmosphere for one final game this year. And then then we're in the playoffs. So everybody buckle up. We'll be doing some stuff, and I'm hoping follow us all on Twitter, because we're hoping to do some stuff where we can actually hang out with you guys a little bit, maybe during these playoffs. And so we'll see. But yeah, that'll do it for us here. Let's go Pens. Let's have a good game on Thursday, but not hurt our draft stock. And we will talk to you guys next week.